Hi, I'm Jane Farnham from Great British Talent, and welcome to a series of video podcasts where we meet our very talented speakers who are all available for your corporate events. Essentially, it's an opportunity for you to find out more about our speakers, what they talk about, and how they can help you add value to you and your businesses. Today, I'm very pleased to say I'm chatting with serial entrepreneur Andrew Scott. Andrew, welcome.
Very nice to be here, Jane. Thank you.
Well, the last time I saw you, you absolutely inspired me. I came away feeling really positive. It was lovely to spend such an evening with you over dinner, laughing, chatting, being authentic, being real. It was an absolute wonderful evening. Thank you.
It was a wonderful evening and dinner, and your team were incredible. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, no, it was our pleasure. So where do we start, Andrew? Because your story is rather varied and interesting. Take me back to the early years in Ireland and the very beginnings.
Well, I guess my earliest memory wasn't a particularly good one. So in March 1972, I was a young toddler, and my brother and his wife took us out to tea in the afternoon to a restaurant in Belfast, city centre restaurant. And unfortunately, Irish terrorists planted a bomb in that restaurant. It was called the Abercorn. And it was a large bomb, and it demolished the restaurant. And sadly, some people lost their lives. Many people were severely injured and maimed. And my brother and his wife survived it, as did I, obviously. But it wasn't without a price to pay. So I spent the next 5 years or so having physical and mental recovery, so serious post-traumatic stress disorder, to the point where I was unable to sleep, and I had to be drugged heavily to sleep. And I then, that then became the norm really in Belfast. At that point in the 70s and 80s, there was a high level of terrorism, bombs going off, shootings. So that was the environment that I grew up in. And a few years later, then my brother unfortunately lost some limbs, an arm and a leg, through a car bomb. And 18 years old, then I just thought, this is it. I've had enough, and I decided to leave Ireland for good and start a new life in England.
Wow, that's definitely a start, isn't it? So how do you think those experiences changed your mindset? I mean, it was obviously a turning point for you, but what started you on the entrepreneurial ladder? Because not
Well,
everybody has that entrepreneurial spirit, do they?
yeah, no, absolutely not. And I think that background as well, having trauma from a very young age, it definitely shapes you, definitely changes the person that you are and that you become. So, and I think for me, it was living in fear and living in an oppressive society growing up, and then moving to England and moving to London when I was 18, and then discovering what was possible, that in this country anybody could be anything they wanted as long as you worked hard and you really committed to something. Then the opportunities were boundless. And I remember clearly not quite understanding why young people my age, boys and girls at 18, 19, why they weren't themselves going out and building businesses and nowadays we call it side hustles, but then it was just money making opportunities. And I couldn't understand why they weren't doing it. And I think it was because I had grown up in that environment, in that oppressive environment, and then suddenly to be away from that and to be in a country, in a city where there were no restrictions and anybody could be anything they wanted to be. This was just mind blowing for me. So my entrepreneurial journey started very early. In fact, when I was 18 in a property deal.
Yeah, so you sort of had success quite quickly, didn't you?
I did. Well, I mean, that entrepreneurial journey started when I was 18. I'd
Yeah.
landed in North London, and I managed to rent a little bed sit, which was a converted garage of a lovely old lady, and very wealthy lady, very big house, and she also owned the house next door. So I convinced her, or I suggested to her that when the tenants moved out of that house that she owned, that I become the next tenants. And she laughed at me and said, Andrew, you can't afford, I know what you earn, you can't afford to rent that big house. And I said, look, let me have a go. I'll rent out some of the rooms, and in return, I'll do your gardening. I'll look after your house. I will do whatever you need me to do because, you're an elderly lady. You're on your own. I'll do your garden. I'll help you. And she loved it. So, a few weeks later, at 18 years old, I'm now living in what today is, a 2 or 3 or 4 million pound property. And I then rented out the other rooms of that house, and I ended up making more money from the room rentals than I actually did my pay at the time.
So that was the first one. And then what was the first business
So
instead of a side hustle?
yeah, that's it. So I had a little job at the time, but I wanted to do something on my own. So I set up a small business called ECS, Electronic Control Systems, and I had when I was in Ireland, I had done a course on electronics. So I decided to apply that to a business. So I had these little intercoms that I made, and they were door entry systems. So you would fit it on the outside of your home, and inside the home was the two-way intercom, and the homeowner could press a button and talk to somebody inside or outside, and also press a button to let them into the house, and also press another button to turn it into an alarm. So nowadays, everybody's got these. They're called Ring doorbells. But back then, this was completely new and original, and there wasn't anything like this. And I convinced a bank to lend me some money, to give me an overdraft, to buy some stock and to make these products. And I went round door to door selling them because I had no marketing budget. I had no marketing expertise. So I went round literally doors, knocking doors, selling these devices, or trying to. And after about 6 months, the bank manager called me in and said, look, Mr. Scott, we're looking at your bank account. There's lots going out and there has been zero coming into the bank account. And at that point, I realized that I hadn't sold one device, and I had a big shed full of these things. So, and what I realized, actually, that was my first entrepreneurial failure, if you like, but it was also a massive learning experience because, what I thought was good, customers didn't want.
Yeah.
And what I realized is it doesn't really matter what I think or my mother thinks or my best friend thinks. Great, Andrew, this is a great idea, go for it. What I realized is in business, the only opinion that matters is that of your customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my first adventure and my first failure. But
It's funny you say that because I used to work on shopping telly doing a bit of sales, and we'd get these products coming in that I had to sell, and I'd be like, oh my God, this isn't going to sell. And it would fly out the door. And then something that comes in and I'm like, oh, I really like that. It never sold. And it was just showing me that my audience was completely different to me and my taste. And it was a bit eye-opening because I really genuinely thought that the products that I liked, everybody would go for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those lessons, quite often what you learn from when you're young, growing up, or your first couple of jobs, they really set you up for life and they teach you skills. So I learned from that, and I applied those learnings in future. I then decided to stick to a corporate path and commit to that because I think quite often what happens nowadays is a lot of young entrepreneurs are told get a day job and then build a side hustle. And that's fine if the side hustle works and takes off, but if it doesn't, what it means is you're not really 100% committed to your job and your role. And as a result, that can quite often hold you back in terms of career progression. So with me, then I decided to go all in. And I literally went all in. I came into the office on Saturdays. I learned about the business that I was working for. And as a result of that, I got promoted and promoted and promoted. So I held a very senior position then at a very young age. and again, I learned from that, and I was then able to progress, move into a new role where again, a very senior role where I managed to be part of a team that did a turnaround, business turnaround, and build a successful business from there. And then I spent the next few years then really gaining a reputation as a business growth expert or a turnaround expert.
So I remember when we were chatting, you told me that your first business that you sold, made a lot of money, and
Yeah.
then you had a disaster because you invested in another business and lost everything. I mean, what does that make you come back stronger than ever before, do you think? Or because some people, I suppose, at that point, it's fight or flight, isn't it? It's sink or swim, I should say.
Oh, no, and it absolutely is, and you're absolutely right. So I built this stellar career. I became perhaps overly confident, and I made a business decision to acquire another company that was in dire trouble, and I felt that I could turn this around. You know, I'm the turnaround king. I'm the growth king. I can do this. I was in my mid-30s, and so I bought that business, and I didn't do enough due diligence on it, and a domino effect took place that resulted in me not only losing that business but losing everything. I had personal guarantees, you know, and the banks went after me, so I ended up losing everything at around 36, and that was really traumatic. I mean, the only thing that I had to my name at the time was a clapped out old 5 Series BMW that was old and had, you know, a couple of 100,000 miles on the clock. And I remember sitting on the beach in Weston-super-Mare in the southwest, sat on the beach in that car, looking at the water, thinking, "What the hell am I going to do now?" But the one thing that kept me going, Jane, was that I had 2 young sons, and I knew I had to do something, and I knew I couldn't let this be the end. And so, you know, I made a commitment on that day on that beach to start all over again and build from scratch. And the challenge I had at that point was I ended up living in a horrible little flat with this old car and over £100,000 worth of credit card debt. But I thought, look, I've got to go again. And, you know, and I think a lot of people are in that position where, you know, they don't know what the future holds, and, you know, and they can't see beyond tomorrow. And the one thing that I've learned from that is no matter how bad things get, no matter how impossible it seems, there is always a new tomorrow, always, always. So I launched a new business then. It was just me. I set myself up as a consultant, and because the one thing that I did know was how to grow businesses. So I set myself up as a consultant, working with 2 or 3 companies and driving around the UK in that clapped out old BMW. And I started to build from there, very small at the start, just me. And, you know, after a couple of years, the car gave up the ghost, and I had to pay somebody to take it away. And then I just started building and building and building. And, you know, I got a few lucky breaks along the way, but primarily it was sheer hard work and belief, and absolute belief in what I was doing. So I then launched my group then, Ascot Group. It was one company at that time called Perplex, and then we built that into, you know, £70 million worth of revenue, 3 7-figure companies, and, you know, invested in lots of other companies, and built a large property portfolio on the side as well. But, you
It's
know,
like a side hustle.
yeah, I mean, I just developed this theory: is if I'm going to run a business, it's going to have some premises, so I might as well own the premises.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That way, I've got complete control, and I'm not tied to the leases or dilapidations claim, which is, you know, what really hurt me previously was a legal dispute over a dilapidations claim. So, you know, I vowed I would never be in that position again. So, you know, I launched one business, I built it up. I got a great management team around me. I then launched another business, built that up, and did the same. And I did it again and again and again. And then in 2023, I was approached by a very high-profile business tycoon called Richard Harpin, who is the guy who sold HomeServe for £4.1 billion 2 years ago. So he approached me and said, "Look, I love what you do." At this point, I built a very successful media company called Business Leader Magazine,
Yeah.
and it became really the leading publication for entrepreneurs in the UK. It was a magazine, online, newswires, big events, Business Leader Awards, Scale Up Awards, and our partners were Amazon and HSBC and BMW and companies of that nature. And this caught the eye of Richard, who approached me and said, "Look, I want to be in that space. I want to support other entrepreneurs." And we got together. I'd worked with him a number of times previously, and then we agreed a deal for him to acquire the business, which took place in September 23.
Right. Well, so what do you think is the most important principle that separates businesses from failure, and those that grow and adapt and really command the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, there's you talk to 10 different business owners, you'll get
It'll
10
be different, yeah.
opinions. But for me, I've now built and sold and grown maybe 15 business or more than 15 businesses.
Yeah.
And I have developed a framework. In fact, I've developed several frameworks, one for businesses and one for individuals within the business. And for the business to create sustainable growth, one of the things to be aware of is that anybody can build a high growth business for a year or two, and then it falls off a cliff.
Yeah.
And is it the stats are something like 85% of businesses fail. So anybody can have some short-term success, anybody can appear to win big time, but really what matters is what you do sustainably over the long term. That's what really matters. And so for me, there are some core elements to that. There's the three basic principles, which are attract, convert, retain. So attract is constant new inquiries coming into the business. Convert is your ability to build a relationship with those inquiries or prospects or inquiries and turn them into happy customers. And then the third element is retain, which is a real strategy about building those relationships into long-term repeat buyers, customers that are advocates for you. And if you imagine that as a circle, so attract, convert, retain, and then sat right in the middle of that is customer experience. If you provide amazing customer experience at the point of the inquiry, at the point of the sales process, and then you continue to do that throughout that retention period, you're going to build a business that grows and grows and grows because customers don't want to leave. They recommend you. That becomes more leads. So that simple process of attract, convert, and retain, and starting off it
It
is
sounds like common sense, doesn't it? But so many people get it wrong.
yeah.
I mean, I think we were chatting about this over dinner. One of my biggest pet hates is bad customer service.
Yeah.
And I will let if I go out for a meal, I'll let bad food go by the by if the service is good.
Yeah.
I'll obviously I expect to be reimbursed if it's not, whatever, but I just, bad customer service. And so much so that when you have great customer service now, it changes your day. I went into my local store the other day and there was this really, really friendly young lady, probably in her 20s, serving me, "Hello, have you got everything?" But it was so natural and authentic. It wasn't trying to upsell. She was just genuinely trying to be friendly. And I said to her, I felt like my mum. I went, "Do you know what? It's been such a pleasure to be served by you today. I wish we saw this level of customer service across the board." And I don't understand why people when they're in leadership roles or supervising roles, it's smile and attention and giving people what they want. And for me, that's the essence. I mean, everything else is applicable too. But I think for me, it's just, that's something that people can do very easily.
Yeah, and 100%. And this is something our American cousins get
Yeah.
so right
Yeah.
and so well. You walk into a shop in the US, I was there a few weeks ago, you walk into a shop there, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be in the shop. It's a
Yeah.
pleasure to deal with the sales consultants. Very often at that level, retail stores, they're some of the lowest paid people in the working environment, and yet they're so important for you as a customer because that's your point of contact and your experience, whether it's on the phone or in a store.
When I used to go on the high street shopping when I was younger, the difference between the customer service in Next and Gap, which obviously one's British and one's like American, it
Yeah.
was just different, completely different experience.
Pulls apart. I think the other thing to understand about customer service and customer experience is, you know, companies sometimes think good customer service is delivering the right product on time. So this is what we sell, and we've delivered the right product to the customer at the right time, at the right price.
Mm,
But that's not good customer service.
mm,
That's just what the customer is paying for.
yeah,
That's the expectation. Good customer service, good customer experience is when you're doing more than that, when you're adding more value to that. So
yeah,
this concept that great customer service is meeting the customer needs.
yeah,
No, it's not. That's just what they're paying for.
yeah. Now, I know through your time with your Business Leader magazine, you ran hundreds and hundreds of events. You
Yeah.
spoke and hosted at these events, so speaking comes very natural to you. So there must be so much you can cover: leadership, marketing, strategy, resilience, growth, change management, personal development. What can our audiences really, expect from you, and how can you help them in terms of really getting some added value from hearing you talk?
Okay.
Because I
I
know
think,
you were sorry before you start, because I know you were telling me about that story when you went out and spoke and you had a stream of people waiting for you after the event to ask you loads of questions, so you must have really hit the mark there. So what do you think it is that you can really help with?
yeah, well, there's a number of things there. I think the first thing that quite often entrepreneurship is seen as this tough environment, and you've got to be strong and tough, and the reality is entrepreneurship is the loneliest place in the world to be, and it's one of the hardest things to run a business, especially if you employ people, and you've got to have your game face on all the time. You've got to be on marketing, on sales, on finance, on operations, on customer service, on HR
Mm,
all the time, and it's exhausting, and it can be a very lonely place. My passion really is to help. I've spent the last 20 years mentoring entrepreneurs, and that has really become my passion. So I think for me, what I want to be able to do is support entrepreneurs and give them the skills, the right attitude, and the framework to help them successfully grow their business and enjoy doing it. So it's partly teaching skills and frameworks, because nobody goes to school to learn about being an entrepreneur or how to run a business.
yeah,
Nobody does that. So these are all learned skills that take time, and to have the right attitude, the right mindset to deal with resilience, to deal with setback, um, and and how to operate at speed, how to get the right focus, how to making sure you're going in the right direction and doing the right things. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs, and I was one of these, really suffers from imposter syndrome.
mm,
As you become successful, you perhaps self sabotage, or you don't feel you deserve it. And the other thing that happens is when you start to become successful, you very often find it more difficult to make decisions because fear of loss kicks in. You don't want to lose what you've built up.
mm,
So fear becomes a big issue for entrepreneurs as they're growing a business. So, and these are all experiences that I've had in the past: self-doubt, low self-worth, fear of making the wrong decisions, etc. So I think for me, what I want to be able to do is to help entrepreneurs grow successful and sustainable long-term businesses through developing the right skill sets, supporting the right mindset, and making sure they take the right actions. So that's that's really what I'm about now. I want to go on a journey really to support British entrepreneurs to grow successfully and sustainably, and enjoy doing it, Jane, as well.
And tell me your thoughts about hiring, because I think you place that a lot of importance on who you hire, don't you? How?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I am less about skills and technical skills, and I'm all about attitude. We hire for good hearts, we hire for great attitudes, because I absolutely believe that you can teach skills. You can send anybody in a program, you can sit down and coach them one to one. And so in our business, we hire for great attitude. And then we teach the skills. We relentlessly teach and train. And in our business, absolutely everybody knows. We've got about 90 staff at the minute. Everybody knows where we're going as a business, how we're going to get there, and the role that they play in that. So I think one of the key things in terms of employing people is to make sure it doesn't matter if it's the office junior or your board directors. It's crucial that everybody's aligned on the same mission. Everybody understands what the business is about and where it's going and what it means to them as well. So we hire for great attitude. We then instill our values and principles into everybody who joins us, and our expectations in terms of where we're going, what we stand for, and our values and principles. So in our office, we have an old traditional metal knight, Knights of the Round Table, and a knight is recognised for courage and for integrity and about doing the right thing. So that knight sits in our office, and it sets as a reminder for all of our staff that that's what we're about. We're about serving customers, and we're about doing the right thing morally, ethically, and really looking after our customers, and we do it with courage. So that's our sort of business ethos. It's probably, I'm sure there are many organisations that have got a similar ethos, but I think for us that's the number one.
Oh yeah, it was front and center when I came to your offices. I think it was great, and I think that's why Steve and I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you and Shane, because it was just, it's singing from the same hymn sheet in terms of integrity and if customer efficiency, customer comes first, and trying to do everything with a good heart and be authentic. And I think that was really clear when I met you, and that's why it was such an enjoyable evening.
But it is because everything else is smoke and mirrors,
Mm,
and it's fine. It's fine if you want short term, but if you want to build something of real value. So for me, what I do, I want to build legacies. So
mm,
when I build a business, and whether I keep it or exit the business, I've built it to become a legacy business.
mm.
So with the sale of Business Leader 18 months ago, I know that Richard Harden is a good custodian of that business, and he'll take it on to do great things with it. So I think that, but all the values and principles were all instilled in that business right from the start.
Oh, that's great. Well, listen, thank you so much for chatting to us today. I can't wait to get you out and about there. Our audiences are going to be thrilled. So just finally, what do you love most about speaking?
I love impacting people to go out and make a difference, because there's one thing having the theory and this is what you should do. It's a very different thing to see entrepreneurs and business leaders take that away and then action it. And actually, for me, I'm really passionate to see entrepreneurs change the business and grow the business, and then come back to me 6 months later or a year later and say, look, actually, we've applied this and it's made a massive difference. And I think that event that you mentioned a couple of months ago that I spoke at,
Yeah.
I think that really resonated with the audience, and because it was about being authentic. And business is hard. There's nobody out there that has built a business easily, so it's hard, and to be around other people and to share that journey with other people and say, look, it was hard. Here's some of the challenges that I faced. Here's some of the failures that I faced. Here's some of the fears that I had to overcome, but here's how I did it. And you can go out and do the same as well. I think that really makes a difference.
Yeah, and what I love about it is it's real. Because when I look at what my children are being faced with in terms of social media, a lot of people, like you say, smoke and mirrors, pretending that they've gone from this to this and it's all happened very quickly. So my son often feels a little bit disheartened that it's not happening quick enough. And
Yeah.
it's you've just got to keep on being consistent and working hard and learning and growing and all of these things. But when people make it look, which I think is the social media world altogether, people make things look quite authentic. They make it look real, but it's not actually real. So
I think, I mean, this is a real challenge. A lot of entrepreneurs are facing burnout and high levels of stress because they are looking at social media and seeing what other people are doing and thinking, why haven't I got that success? Why aren't I there yet? And, you know, and 90% of it is smoke and mirrors, and it's just not real.
yeah, yeah,
And I think real entrepreneurship is not a straight line. You don't grow in a straight line. It's like a hockey stick.
yeah.
So you've got to put in the effort and the time and the blood, sweat, and tears in the early years to be able to gain the rewards further down the line. So you've just got to plant the seeds and then reap the rewards afterwards.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew. Well, if you'd like Andrew to inspire, motivate, and help develop your team, then do call us on 01753 439 289, or you can email me directly, jane@greatbritishtalent.com.